Hey guys, welcome back to my Unity Chain Sim tutorial. In part 3, we'll test our detail culling setup in game, and then we'll add physics and collision to the chains so we can simulate them for the first time. It is important to note how noticeable culling can vary in the game view because it can be a bit bigger sometimes than others, and especially when the game is being played in full screen, the final game, it can be a bit more noticeable, and it can also depend on the resolution. It can depend on all of those things, how noticeable the LOD effect is. We can see that in our scene view, we can adjust all of these sliders to adjust how noticeable this is. However, we might not have as much control over it, how it looks in the game view once we play our game, if we don't kind of design it oriented to that. We don't want to defer to how it looks in the scene view, we want to defer to how it looks in the game view. So now right click on the assets folder, not the create menu, to select import package, and under this there are different packages in the standard assets that come with Unity. I'm going to choose the one characters. It will decompress it and different things. What we're going to be using in this example is the first person character. I don't think we're going to want the rollerball. However, we may want the third person character, a humanoid character that comes with this as well. I'm not going to uncheck any of this stuff either. Just hit import our selection that we just made. Okay, so once done, we should see a standard assets folder in your project. So we should see a first person character folder. Open this and open the prefabs folder, and this contains a saved file of the game object with the components like the script, character controller, different things, audio source. Collapse this, add this, and this is a character that we can control with WASD or the arrow keys, or look around with our mouse. Once we've done this, I'm going to add in a quad 3D object, and I'm going to firstly rotate this on the x-axis like this, and now scale this way up, because by default it's like not very big. So we're creating a quad because essentially this is a very simple version of a plane. So the plane here, the mesh for this, has more vertices than the quad, whereas the quad is just 4 vertices and 2 tries. Delete the plane because we don't want it. Move over the first person character controller, pan around here, select the chain link, and maybe scale this down as well, because actually the grid units, these squares here are actually meters, I believe, in the world space in Unity by default. So we're actually going to scale down this chain link to 0.1 on all 3 axes. So this is going to make it quite a bit smaller, and this is going to make it more accurate in the real world, because if we don't do this, when we apply our physics to it, it'll be kind of slow. Enable the quad again, position our chain link somewhere around the first person character controller so that we can see it in our game view. We're going to hit play. We're also getting this warning here. There are 2 audio listeners in this scene. Please ensure there's always exactly 1 audio listener in the scene. The reason is we have another camera here. It also has an audio listener, and also we have a camera component on the first person character object underneath the FPS controller. So we're going to set the main camera to active and disable the audio listener. I think the quad has a mesh collider. I don't know why we fell through the world, I think. I'm just going to move the character here, and you can see that this actually works fine. We can more easily control how noticeable it is by hitting play once we're done setting, so we can kind of adjust and then play, adjust and then play. The game, enter play mode, is kind of fiddly, but it does ensure that it will look the way that you want in the game view. Here, we've actually kind of done 2 things at once. We have made a quad that the first person character controller can walk on. We also kind of have this character, and we can also actually interact and collide with the chains. Once we've set that up, we can go ahead and do that right now. And once the chains are linked, this is going to look pretty cool. And it's also going to be kind of interesting to walk around the scene and push the chains in the way that we want to. Add component, box collider. And we also want to make sure that all the objects that are under the chain link are set to 0, 0, 0 in their transform position. With hovering over the scene view, we can now hit F to focus on the chain link object, disable the quad. The reason that we're adding a box collider is because the default, if I add a mesh collider to this model, I have found that that does not work. Basically, if I freeze the position of the chain, which is what we're going to do for testing, more on that in a moment, I found that the other chains that don't have their position frozen just fall through the first chain. And that's not what you want. And also, like, trying to use the model mesh as a collision frame is also more expensive because it has to use the model as the chain link. And also, what level of detail would you use for that? Not that that really matters because you can't exactly see that as well as level of detail in the rendering, the meshes. We're going to go into top isometric view. We are going to choose an X size. So because we have made the tube radius of this torus to like 0.25, this side is a quarter of this span here, because we set the radius as well to 1. So because it's set to 2.5 and this box collider seems in this span only, I think around 0.5 would be a good size for this. And now 0.75 seems like it would be kind of exact. And now I'm also going to give it a Z size, and because we centered the pivot of this object, we won't have any problems trying to add these colliders. To set Z to maybe 3, bit less, 2.8. Now, right click on the component and select copy component. Just right click again and paste component as new. Flip the X value, and this will offset it in the opposite direction. Because we've duplicated the component, it basically is an easier way making a box collider on this other side of the chain. Add another box collider, set the Z size to 0.5, and set the X size to 2, and the Z position, we're going to set this to maybe 1.1875. Okay, 1.165. 1.15. That looks good. Because these box colliders are always centered, we can do the same thing here. Right click on this, copy component, again select paste component as new, and then left of the Z value and type in minus and negate this value. You can see that we do have another problem here. The Y size of this collider is a bit too thick. Look at all of the box colliders. It's set to 1, and yet the X size is set to 0.5 in this one to correspond with the tube radius. 0.5 and copy, and we can paste this, and now it's more accurate with the chain. And now we're going to set physics. Add component, rigid body, and important, we want to select the one that says only rigid body and not the one that says rigid body 2D, because that is for two-dimensional games. The only thing that we're going to really set for now is the position constraints. Under the constraints dropdown, we're going to set all of them on. Duplicate the chain, move this over 0.1215. We're also going to just do this, duplicate it, and 0.3. Rotate this middle one on the Z axis, set this to 90, and this is going to create the kind of first 3 links for our chain, and this one is frozen position. This 1 and 2, Command D to duplicate them. We can then move them, so we're going to move these 2 chain links, and now we're going to duplicate this, and essentially just repeat that kind of process. Use the kind of pan tool and actually make this horizontal to make it easier, and just basically keep doing this until we have a chain. So that looks good, and you can see that all of them seem to be changing at the same time. However, if we go into this mode, we can see that are all of them not changing at different rates? In perspective mode they are. So as you can see, they're changing to different colors in different ways, and if we zoom out, you kind of faintly see the orange color transition. This is not what we're going to want. Like, ultimately, I just forgot to change all of these materials. Drag in the chain into the element 0, and that's the metallic material that we just created. Final, just to remind ourselves. And now we're going to re-enable the quad, these chain links, and they seem like they are under, and just position this somewhere that looks suitable right now. So we're going to select the first person controller and kind of move and maybe rotate it as well, and maybe move the chain links. We're going to play test this. And as you can see here, that is not really working correctly. You can kind of see the shadows of all these chains. That one chain that is in the air right now rotating, you can see the shadow kind of moving here. This is obviously not the result that you want. Almost all of them seem to be falling in one piece from the kind of anchor chain. We might want to change some settings here. Collision detection from discrete to continuous, and this will basically improve the collision detection rate. And hopefully, one thing that we can do is to adjust the drag, 0.1. And drag is basically kind of air resistance. And it's still not really working. 1 or maybe 10. So drag kind of makes it move a bit less fast. Actually, that doesn't fix anything. So set this back to 0, I guess. One more optimization that we can make to get this to actually work, increase the fixed time step rate. So what this is doing is it's reducing the amount of time that it waits to update the physics calculations on each of these objects. Go to Edit to change this, Project Settings, and then Time. So under this, we can see a value called fixed time step. It's now set to 0.01. However, I'm going to change it to 0.005. And now let's see how this plays. We can actually see now the chain is behaving how we want it. And of course, the materials are changing color, as you can see here. And we can kind of interact with the chains. We don't have much control over it. I don't know, move these chains down just a bit, and maybe also the 16th chain here, the last chain, constraint, not the rotation, just the position. My mistake. And, okay. Oh, the last chain is actually moved just downward. I actually kind of suspected that. Position constraints on. Oh, it's still not kind of working. So why is this not working? I don't really know. See though that we can sort of interact with this and kind of make it go in different directions. Also, whenever you play the game, it's a good idea to turn on maximize on play. This will do two things. One is, let's go into play mode and test. It will turn this into a full screen game, almost. At least fit to the window. And also, it'll basically call out the scene view as well as Pro Builder, the hierarchy, which if you have like tons of objects in the scene, might be a bit of a performance hog while playing the game, inspector, project view. So basically, you can see here, I can kind of notice that it's a bit smoother as a game.